Welcome to all of you in Korea and around the world. I am Kim Jae-chun for In Focus. The global community's attention is drawn to North Korea following the news of its leader Kim Jong-il's death. Equally enigmatic as the deceased leader himself is what kind of changes will be made to his country with his absence, and how his death would influence the inter-Korean relations. For an in-depth look at these questions, we are joined by two expert guests today. Joining on my right is Professor Philip Park from Gyeongnam University.
Glad to be here.
And joining on my left is Professor Dennis Florik from Hankuk University of Foreign Service.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start with you, Professor Park. North Korea must be going through a tumultuous time with its sudden death of longtime leader Kim Jong-il. So can you tell us a little bit about the current situation in North Korea?
Yes, North Korea is going through probably the second biggest events of their country. According to North Korean media, there's a report of mourners forming big lines for the death of Kim Jong-il, and the memorial altars has been set up across the country, and all the markets have been shut down, and people are not ordered not to leave their household.
Okay. Professor Florik, if you watch these newsreels, you can certainly notice that North Korea is in a state of official mourning, but some experts are saying that North Korean public is not as sorrowful of the death of Kim Jong-il as they had been when Kim Il-sung died in 1994. So what is your take on this?
I think there may be pockets where the dear leader was not as popular, especially in the rural areas, which have suffered the most under his leadership. However, I think you have to understand the cult of personality around the Kim family. They have been idolized so much, they are actually associated with the very identity of the North Korean nation. So I think you might even compare it to the Japanese emperor system, where the emperor was the people. And I think that for a large number of North Koreans, the Kim family represents, in some way actually is, North Korea. So I think most of what you see of the extravagant mourning is actually genuine.
Oh, you think the mourning is real, not manufactured, or not the result of...
There may be dissatisfaction with the material lives of the people, but I don't think that translates into dissatisfaction with the Kim family, at least not at this point.
Okay. Professor Park, let's talk about Kim Jong-il's legacy a little bit. Can you briefly go over Kim Jong-il's autocratic rule and what kinds of impacts that he had on North Korea in general?
Well, basically he been unofficially selected as the heir of Kim Il-sung in 1974. From then on, he has been preparing for the successor of Kim Il-sung. So, and he became the official successor of Kim Il-sung in 1980. So for many years, he's been prepared as successor of Kim Il-sung. And you see, his legitimacy is not just coming from that he's the first son of the Kim Il-sung, but he also made a tremendous achievement. For example, he's the main architect and main entrepreneur of Juche ideology. And he's probably the one who made North Korea monolithic country or leadership. So in that respect, I think he achieved a lot of things. But at the same time, when he became the successor of the Kim Il-sung, his country was going on the economic crisis. So he's probably have accumulate those dissatisfaction among the people in North Korea as well.
So speaking of economic crisis, Professor Florik, the North Korean leadership promised that the North Korea would become a strong and prosperous nation, so-called Gangsong Deguc, by the end of 2012. What is your take on this? Do you think that they will accomplish this feat by the end of 2012?
No, clearly they have not accomplished this feat. That's one of the advantages of having a massive propaganda apparatus, is that you can tell people whatever you want to tell them. But I think the legacy of Kim Jong-il in the economic sphere is pretty dismal. I think another legacy that we should probably point out is the military first policy. When Kim Jong-il took over, the Workers' Party was really the center of the government of North Korea. But more and more, the military generals have been moved into prominent positions. And the line between the party bureaucracy and the military leadership has been completely blurred. I also think it's worth pointing out that, as Professor Park said, Kim Jong-il had a long period of preparation for succession, more than a decade. But Kim Jong-un was only named successor just about a year ago. So he hasn't had the long apprenticeship that Kim Jong-il had. He's a much younger man. He's more inexperienced. So this is a significant difference in the transition this time around.
I see. North Korea said that they have prepared for power transfer to Kim Jong-un for years, but as Professor Freud just said, when Kim Jong-il succeeded Kim Il-sung, he was much experienced and he had a firm control over the military. So how would you foresee the consolidation of power by Kim Jong-un? Do you think he's going to have a strong grip on the society as his father and grandfather did?
No, apparently not. Well, basically there's two scenarios, and maybe three. One scenario is that he's probably try to maintain or succeed in monolithic leadership of Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung. And the second scenario will be that he's probably, North Korean leadership will be more like a collective leadership in China. If both fails, then they're probably a military coup d'etat. But I think we have to understand that Kim, although it was very short, 3 years basically, when Kim Jong-il fell into illness in 2008, he has 3 years to prepare, and if you assume that Kim Jong-il is rational, meaning that he knows what's going on and he tried to maximize his and his country's interest. Then it's quite likely that he has some kind of a plan or some kind of a manual or a guideline that prepare for Kim Jong-un. So I think Kim Jong-un will follow that manual. So I think the likely scenario is that the power will be centered around Kim Jong-un, but will not be the center of the power. So and I think they will gradually move towards the collective leadership style of China in times.
I see. Professor Florik, what is the possibility of military strongmen like Lee Young-ho taking over power, and particularly when he thinks that Kim Jong-un is not really an efficient leader?
Well, I think in the short run, all the North Korean leadership is going to be concerned about making a smooth transition. So I think in the short run, we'll probably have a fusion of the two alternatives that Professor Park mentioned, which is that symbolically out in front in public, Kim Jong-un is going to be the face of the government and will seem to be in a similar position as his father and grandfather, but that behind the scenes there will be more of a collective leadership with the military playing the key role. Now, if the regime fails over time, it is possible that eventually there'll be a military coup. But I don't think right now is not the time to be speculating about what's going to happen in the mid to long term future. I think in the short term, Kim Jong-un is going to be the visible symbol of the regime, and behind the scenes, more senior leaders are going to take a much more important role than they have in the past. That his leadership, unlike his father and his grandfather, is going to be more symbolic, at least in the beginning.
I see. So in the short run, there's not going to be any serious power struggle because the country is in the state of official mourning. But down the road, if these military strongmen and think that that Kim Jong-un turns out to be an efficient leader, there might be a serious power struggle.
If he proves to be a truly disastrous leader, yeah. I think there's going to be a power struggle in any case, but I think it's going to be behind the scenes. I mean, the Chinese collective leadership, we never know what's really going on behind the scenes. You don't have public debates in the Chinese media. You don't have election campaigns. The power struggle goes on behind the scenes, and I think that people are already moving and jockeying for their position. But I think the Kim family plays a very useful function for the North Korean regime, as we talked about before, about the cult of the personality as a unifying factor in the nation. I don't see any military strongman really wanting to dispense with that advantage anytime soon.
I see. Let's talk about the future. I mean, policy of Kim Jong-un regime. Some experts saying that, well, the death of Kim Jong-un actually created the opportune momentum for improving inter-Korean relations. Do you think Kim Jong-un regime will be more opening up to the outside world and more, maybe taking a proactive position towards South Korea? What do you think?
Yes, I think what we have to understand is that Kim Jong-un is he's a successor of Kim Jong-il, but he will not be replacing Kim Jong-il. But also, as we talked about, and I think Professor Flori's point is well taken, that he will be advised by the senior members of KWP and from the military. So that means the continuity will be strengthened, will be emphasized in his leadership and in his tenure. So that means what we have to understand what's going on before the death of Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-il tried to open up their country. I think we have to make a correction, by the way, is that North Korea is not going to be the strong and prosperous country by 2012, but opening gate of becoming strong and prosperous country in 2012. That means that we'll see many changes, such as opening to try to normalize relation with the United States, resolving nuclear crisis, and also normalizing a dialogue between the inter-Korean talks. So that means if that's what happened before the death of Kim Jong-il, then I think that will be continued by the current leadership headed by the Kim Jong-un.
I see. Professor Flori, it's going to be very difficult to predict the inter-Korean relations, but some people say that, well, the inter-Korean relations would take the turn for the better. What is your take on this?
I think that's certainly possible. I think in the short term, and I disagree maybe a little bit with Professor Pong, I'm not so sure that 2012 is going to be the key moment now. Because in the short term, I think the emphasis in North Korea will be on stability, and they will be turning even more inward than they have in the past to make sure that the transition goes smoothly. But I think the very fact that power is changing does mean that there's a lot of hope for the mid to long term future. This regime is in a very difficult position. Its economy is just not functioning correctly. It's under great pressure from all the outside powers, and including South Korea, to denuclearize. So I think from the mid to long term, there could be very substantial changes, as Professor Pong indicated.
I see.
And of course, South Korea will play a key role in this.
Okay, so the South Korean government will have to capitalize on this momentum created by the death.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it will require wise policy towards the North.
Okay. I think in a transition period like this, North Korean leadership might be tempted to launch military provocations towards South Korea because they might need a crisis situation to mobilize popular support behind the new leadership. So what do you think about North Korean new regime launching military provocations in year 2012?
Well, we can speculate on that, but I think, as Professor Flores pointed out, and you see, they want stability, and we're not sure whether Kim Jong-un his power is strong enough to provoke such events. So I
but
think
to legitimate their leadership, they might launch provocations of Yonpyeong kind or Cheonan.
No, I think the situation is different because because of the Yonpyeong Island, the bombing of Yonpyeong Island. I think South Korea is more prepared and on military alert. So that means that if there's small provocation, as South Korea declared that they will have a reaction, retaliatory measures will be taken by South Korea. So I think it's not as easy. I mean, it's not an easy situation, but it's not be any easier. So and if they want stability, I think if they venture into the those kind of provocation, I think that's possibility is quite small.
What is
I agree with Professor Park on that, but I do think we should at least think about how South Korea would respond in that situation. And I would say that even more than in the past, it's very important that while South Korea not be intimidated, that it ought also not overreact and not feed into any paranoia in the North. When the leadership is weak, a powerful response by South Korea to any contested action could be much more dangerous than it was in the past. So I would urge, if there is the perception that somehow North Korea has provoked South Korea, that the South Korean government be very calm and careful and measured in its response. But I agree with Professor Park. I think it's unlikely.
Okay. All right, I think we have an agreement on this one. Can you tell us a little bit about how other nations are responding to the death of Kim Jong-il and then the ascent of Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un regime in North Korea?
You see, that's differed by the newspaper agencies, but from the government, I mean, the country's government point of view, I think there's common denominator. Is that whether it's China, United States, or Russia, Japan, they all want peaceful power transition. So and particularly China showed support for Kim Jong-il's regime. So I think the power transition in North Korea is gaining in currency and abroad as well.
Professor Flory, can you tell us a little bit
about
I think
the difference in the response between the United States and China is marked. They do both want stability on the Korean Peninsula, but they both have different ideas about how to deal with the North Korean regime. The Chinese are socialist brothers with the North, and they fought together in the Korean War. And while China is not always happy about the behavior of North Korea, there's a historical bond between those two countries. And this was demonstrated when President Hu Jintao and Premier Wen Jiabao went to the North Korean embassy to give their personal condolences to the North Korean government and the North Korean people. In contrast, the Obama administration, which is facing an election next year with a challenge on its right wing, while they expressed sympathy for the North Korean people and a desire for better relations in the future, there were no personal condolences about the actual death of the leader. So the United States is, of course, very frustrated with North Korea. North Korea had promised to denuclearize, and that has not come to pass. And the United States wants to get back on track. That's the overriding goal of the United States. And no American administration can get too friendly with North Korea until that process is back in motion. But in China, China has a different idea of the role it should play in the region. China is the head of the six-party talks, the convener of the six-party talks, and they see their role as kind of an intermediary between the U.S. and South Korea and Japan on one side and North Korea on the other side. They're the only country that can really talk the language of both sides. They can talk the socialist language of the North Koreans and can talk the international systems language of the West and South Korea. Now, many South Koreans are very critical of China for not lining up with them and the Americans step shoulder to shoulder. But I think it's actually very valuable that China has this currency with the North Korean regime, and I think they're going to play a key role if there is to be an opening up of the North Korean regime.
Professor Fleury, right before Kim Jong-il's death, North Korea promised that they would suspend its uranium enrichment program in return for humanitarian aid from the United States. Do you think this deal will stand even after Kim Jong-il's death?
I don't think it's going to go forward right now. It may be come back to in 6 months or a year. But as I said, I don't think anybody in the North is going to be in a position to be making deals in the short term, just because they're too focused on consolidating the new regime.
Yes.
But it was a hopeful sign, and I think it's a place to start anew when the time is appropriate.
What do you think, Professor Park? Do you think that deal will be intact?
Although Professor Flores has points, but I think if you could go back to 1994 when Kim Il-sung died, right after the mourning period is over. Kang Seok-ju was sent to Geneva to have a Geneva agreement with U.S. Representative Gallucci. So in that respect, I think if there's a continuity is emphasized in North Korea leadership, I think if that deal was made between the United States and North Korea, I think they will continue that. Following the same similar path as the 1994.
Well, Professor Fleury, what would be a shrewd policy response from the South Korean government at this critical moment?
Okay, I've been actually surprised by the response of the Lee Myung-bak administration, how affirmative it has been, officially expressing condolences, sanctioning the travel of Kim Dae-jung's widow and Hyundai chairman's widow to North Korea to personally express their sympathy. And I think the Lee administration has been very careful so far and played it fairly smartly. But I think in the long run, things are likely, there's likely to be a time when there's difficulty, and that's when it'll be very important to see how the current administration handles the situation, whether it reverts to a kind of post-Cheonan, post-Young Pyeong-do attitude, or whether it leaves some allowance for the fact that things are very tricky in North Korea and that an overly strong response by South Korea could be more dangerous at this point than under normal circumstances.
Okay. Professor Park, what would be your policy recommendations to the Lee Myung-bak government at this critical juncture?
I fully agree with Professor Flores, and if I add, I want to give more credit to South Korean government. Their policy, their careful and cautious policy, allowing Hyun Jongun, the president of Hyundai Group, and the wife of late President Kim Dae-jung to visit North Korea, and officially, but indirectly, give condolence to North Korea for the death of Kim Jong-il. I think the worst thing we can do is unnecessarily provoking North Korea. So I think South Korea is doing a good job, and but I think we have to watch carefully what's going on in North Korea, and we should react step by step.
Okay. Well, looks like you'll have the final word for today's episode, Professor Fleury.
Well, I hope South Korea continues to follow a wise policy towards the North, and I hope the transition in the North turns out to lead to important changes on the Korean Peninsula and inter-Korean relations.
Okay, well, this is all for today's discussion. Thank you very much for sharing your insights today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, North Korea is going through a turbulent time, and I think the smart policy for South Korea at this stage is to pay close attention to North Korean situation and be fully prepared for any contingencies in North Korea. Well, this has been Kim Jae-chun for In Focus. Thank you for watching.